Hello, Game of Her Own listeners. If you are listening to this the day that it airs, it is Thursday, September 2nd, and we are going into a long weekend for the Labor Day holiday. So, my team is taking a little break, and that means we wanted to re air an episode that happened over a year ago. It's our very first episode of the Game of Her Own podcast with Hannah Basinger, the Atlanta Braves Vice President of Guest Operations and Strategy. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and we look forward to catching up with you next week with a brand new episode on September 9th. Hi there. Welcome to Game of Her Own, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. I bring you stories of women who are game changers, incredible leaders, and trailblazers in the sports industry. You will get a behind-the-scenes look of how they navigated their journey, valuable lessons they learned along the way, and advice for high-achieving women just like you. I'm excited you're here. Let's do this. There is so much noise out there, so much that it can be difficult to hear, and most importantly, listen to what matters most to you. It can be difficult to trust yourself as you make major decisions that impact your career. My guest, Hannah Basinger, takes you on her journey from a trainee to Vice President of Operations and Strategy for the Atlanta Braves. Whenever an opportunity came up, she always trusted herself. During our interview, she shares why and how that has led to her having a fulfilling career. Hannah is a consulting client of mine, and we got to work together at the Chicago Cubs. I can tell you firsthand, by trusting herself, she has had a very impressive career. And to think it's not over yet. When you listen, I think you'll agree. Enjoy. All right, Hannah, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I feel honored to be your guest.
Aw, you guys can't see me, but I'm blushing. So let's go way back before I knew you and tell everybody when you first fell in love with sports.
I love this question because it takes me back. It actually makes me really think about when that happened. And I can honestly say it was as a kid. It was really at a very young age. So I had an older brother and I wanted to do everything he did. And that meant baseball and, any sport he played, I kind of wanted to play. Funny little side story, one year I was the only girl on my t-ball team. So I think it was and is fair to say that I've been passionate about sports since a young age, and I must have really loved it if I wanted to be the only chick on the baseball team.
How old are you? I'm sorry, everyone listening, I don't have children, but how old are you when you start playing t-ball?
So that's a good question. I think you can play as early as 3, but I was probably 5 or 6 around this time. And it was before you could play softball. So we didn't have any all girls softball until I was about 8 or 9.
So you're the only girl on your t-ball team, probably around 5 or 6 years old. I'm sure your mom could tell us exactly, but she's not here. So did you realize the magnitude of that when you were 5 or 6 years old?
No, I think that's what's so cool about, being a child is you're not aware of the magnitude of certain moments. But I love to tell that story. I've probably shared it 50 times over the years, just that I had no idea then that it was a big deal, but looking back, and I love that my parents didn't care and didn't make a big deal about it and just let me play. And I can picture that team picture so well. I really stood out in the team picture with my white Keds on, and they were filthy, but that's what I wore.
I was going to say, weren't they brown Keds by the time you were all done?
They were. And that's how I picture them in that team picture. I'll have to find that. But no, I had no idea then that it was a big deal, but it's fun to talk about it now. I wanted to play. I loved playing, and I got to play, and that's all that mattered.
Now, how do you go from 5 or 6-year-old Hannah playing t-ball, wanting to be like your brother, your older brother, to wanting to work in sports?
I always loved sports. And obviously, it started just as a kid and just loving to play. And that's why I love sports. I didn't really have this defined, specific desire to work in sports. I just knew I loved sports. I loved watching sports. I loved listening to sports on the radio. So it was a real passion that was genuine. But when I was in college, I had the opportunity to take an internship with a sports agency. And it just seemed like a neat opportunity. So I didn't really have this, I know I want to work in sports, but the opportunity presented itself, and it was a great first stab at it, I guess you could say, and a unique perspective from an agency perspective. But I didn't know then, I guess that was me realizing that you can mix your career and your passion. I didn't really know that I could do that. A lot of people coming out of college were getting jobs with reputable companies, and I just remember not feeling a desire to do that. And I just remember feeling like that's great. I'm happy for them, but I don't want to do that. And I think in the back of my mind, I knew that I could mix my passion and career and make something out of it. So it was gradual, I'd say.
I love that. I love that. So everyone's off going, they're in college, right? You're watching everyone get these jobs with these bigger companies, right? And probably getting a nice salary to go along with it. And you saw it happening, but you didn't follow the crowd. You were more listening to yourself and trying to understand, well, that's great, but that's not it. There's something bigger out there for me. Did I get that right?
You did, but I didn't know it was sports yet. So I just knew that, I just knew it was something else. So to be honest, I got my real estate license shortly after I graduated from college. I continued to work a part-time job that became a full-time job. It was part-time while I was in college, and then full-time. And it was something I just said, let me keep doing this. They offered me a full-time job. It's definitely not my career. I know that. They know that. I've been honest. But I'm not ready to just jump into this corporate commitment that I'm not passionate about. So let me keep doing what I'm doing right now because it works. And let me figure it out. And then I got my real estate license and became a real estate agent. And I'm super grateful for that experience because I learned a new city really, really quickly, driving around. And it was a great experience. I also learned, dealing with all different types of people and their needs and wants and expectations. But I had that taste of the mix of my passion with a career, with that internship in college, and something was tugging at me to explore that again in a real job way this time. It was a gradual thing to work in sports.
Talk to us a little bit more about what that internship was and what it looked like.
Yeah, so I was an intern at a sports agency that represented not only athletes, broadcasters, coaches. The agency also represented, they had corporate clients. So I was the PR and creative intern, had been a marketing major in college. And my job was to find all of our corporate and player, coach clients in the news every day. So I did the news clips every morning. Compiled those into one document. I had to get them out by a certain time in the morning because everybody wanted to read them in the organization. So I did that in the mornings. I'm sure there's better technology now that maybe automatically finds that stuff for you. But I also got the opportunity to work on a couple of accounts. So we had one corporate client who was a NASCAR sponsor. I worked a lot of activation events and hospitality events in NASCAR. Lucky for me, I grew up watching NASCAR. So that was not so foreign to me. But being on that side of it was really interesting. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was my first taste of the hospitality side of the business and really, putting on a great event, taking care of guests and making them, feel special at an event. That was really my job there, was working certain activations and also just pulling information on how our clients were being referenced in the media.
So PR and creative intern was your first job in sports. You were in college. What year were you? Do you remember? Not that it was a long time ago.
I was a senior. I'd come into college with some credits, and that just allowed me to take the time a little bit. And I really enjoyed summer classes. I would take 2 or 3 summer classes. It was just so much more laid back. So coming into my senior year, I had 3 classes left to graduate. And so I decided to take the whole fall semester off and go do this internship and save the 3 classes for the spring. So I moved to Atlanta from Athens my fall semester just to do this internship. So it was a little unorthodox, but it was an opportunity that I heard about, put myself out there, and, I'm glad, because I didn't realize it at the time, but it was, again, that taste of sports that I went away from for a little while when I went into real estate, but I found myself coming back to.
I love that. So PR intern, you got a great opportunity. Then you went into real estate, right? I'm assuming real estate paid the bills, allowed you to, right? It allowed you to just pay the bills while you figured out what was next. And then what was next? What happened after real estate?
Yeah, so while I was working in real estate, I did that for about 2 years, and I just felt a little bit of a tugging, or I guess you could describe it a couple of ways. It was a tugging because I had had a taste of sports in college through the internship, but it was also a lacking of passion for what I was doing. I was definitely honing skills, so there was value there. I was, like what I mentioned earlier, I was learning a new city. I was interacting with all kinds of different people, some easier to deal with, some difficult to deal with. I was working for someone who was a very established real estate agent and had her processes and ways very much figured out. So I was learning to work with people and a leader that had expectations of me. So I was honing skills, but I didn't feel a connection to my work. I didn't really feel like, again, passionate about it. So I was newly married, 3 months married, and I had been talking to my husband about, maybe I should work in sports again. Maybe I can. I think I remember saying this specifically. Maybe I can make a career of my passion. Maybe I can do that. Because I mentioned it to him and just, put it out there to him, it was in the back of his mind, and through his relationships, actually, he was on a flight somewhere and mentioned to someone that he was traveling with that what I did, that I worked in real estate, but that I was interested in getting back into sports. And she said, "Oh, she should talk to my husband. He works at the Braves." And my husband came home with that little tidbit of like, "Hey, I've got this guy's number that works at the Braves. Maybe you should just reach out to him. Maybe you should just shoot him an email or give him a call and just see what he has to say." And so I did that. And I just, I wrote him an email, said, "My husband met your wife, and he said, you may be a great person to talk to." And my expectation was that this was just somebody that I could just hear their perspective and just pick their brain on what they do. And I can honestly say in no way, shape, or form did I think it would lead to a job. I just thought, I have a contact. Let me reach out to him, see what he has to say. And he responded right away and said, "I'd be more than happy to talk to you. Why don't you come down to the ballpark sometime?" And, I remember thinking that was the neatest thing ever. I'm actually going to get to go down there to the actual, ballpark. And at the time it was Turner Field. So I remember that drive and thinking that was so neat that I was about to have a meeting in a professional sports stadium. And the meeting was, just informative at first. And then he started to talk about a trainee program and said, "Hey, we have a trainee program, and I actually am the only department that hasn't selected my trainee this year. Maybe you would be interested." And I remember being floored of, I definitely wasn't expecting a job opportunity to come out of this. And I am newly married, so I'm not sure if I can make this decision unilaterally. Let me see. Q laughs and head nodding right now, but it was a pay cut. So I was like, I'm going to need to talk to my husband, but wow, like this sounds like a great opportunity. And I remember calling him on the way home, and he was like, do it. It's a foot in the door. He's like, I see it as a foot in the door. So it was that. I mean, it was a foot in the door, and it was in guest services was the department. And I remember being a marketing major going like, well, what is guest services anyway? What is that? I mean, yes, I had done some hospitality events, through the internship, but I didn't really even know what it was. And it's kind of funny. So it kind of picked me, but I quickly grew to love what guest services was and what it meant. And it meant, maybe taking a bad situation and making it even better, or taking or turning it around and then taking a good situation and making it even better, exceeding people's expectations. So I quickly realized that I really liked it. But
I love that story, and I just got the chills, even though I've heard parts of it before. But I love the organic networking, right? I preach networking all of the time. Talk to as many people as you can, and not with the sole goal of just figuring out, how do I get a job from this person? But it sounds like to me, when you were talking about the contact, when you were talking to the contact that your husband found, it was just, you were just, hey, I just want to hear what you had to say. Now, I know this is taking you back, but do you remember like how you approached that email, or that, when you reached out to him at first?
I do remember because I still feel like I'm that same person, and try to take that same approach when I'm reaching out to people, even if it's to ask them a question, or, I just remember just being honest and transparent that this is what I'm doing right now. This is what I did in college. I had an internship. I've really enjoyed real estate. Just recently, and it was recent, just recently, I started feeling like maybe I do want to work in sports. And, I heard that you may be just the person to talk to. So I just remember just being honest about just wanting to talk to him and saying, maybe I could hear your perspective. Knowing me, I probably have that email somewhere and could read it again because I don't delete anything. But I do remember just being honest and transparent and saying, I really just want to learn from you.
So it's super transparent and honest, and no expectations of a job, just because you make that connection.
There were none. And I know that outcome isn't the same for everyone, where you take an informational interview opportunity, or what you think is, a coffee or a lunch just to talk to someone. I know it doesn't automatically end in a job offer. I don't think that's the takeaway from that story. I think the takeaway is what you said, leveraging relationships, right? Networking. Mm-hmm. I have to remind myself that that's still important, even now, just to continue those relationships and maintain those. You just never know. And you're not doing it, you're right, you're not doing it with an expectation in mind or a goal in mind. But it's really neat to see how those relationships could lead to something, or someone tells you about something that, that interests you, and you explore it, or the people that you meet, all of that. So I remember just feeling glad that I expressed the desire out loud to my husband, who kind of had that little seed in the back of his mind, who said something out loud to someone. And then, I think that the lesson in all of it is just the power in relationships.
Yes. So, okay, this is really good on networking, and I didn't even think we were going to go here. So those are some really good gems, and we could talk about that forever. Okay, so now you got this great job as a trainee in guest services for the Atlanta Braves, right? So tell everybody what your title is now for the Braves.
So now I am Vice President of Guest Operations and Strategy.
Woo! From trainee to executive at the Atlanta Braves, but your entire career has not been with the Atlanta Braves in terms of sports and in terms of baseball. So tell us a little bit more about how you got from trainee to a VP.
Yeah, so one baby step at a time, one foot in front of the other. I remember those first couple of weeks on the job as trainee. I quickly learned what guest services was and what it meant and what it was about, and it was a lot of customer service type training and dealing with a lot of different types of people, which I think my real estate career had helped me just understand that a little bit more and understand different personalities and that people having different expectations. And I remember within 2 weeks on the job, I was given the task of working our fan fest. And that year it was actually at the ballpark, and it seemed like a fun event. I really just took it all in. I had a couple specific things I was responsible for. But what I remember most about it is the following day being back in the office and, my boss at the time coming and handing me a stack of paper complaints from the event. They were handwritten complaints that our guest relations office had taken in. And he was like, I'm going to need you to call these folks. I remember being terrified. I was like, ooh, we didn't study this in my marketing classes in college. Gosh, I remember being terrified. Like every phone call I made, I had to, all right, build myself up. Okay, Hannah, you didn't do this to them. They're mad about something that went wrong, but it wasn't you. So just call them and talk to them. And you've gotten to know me, Jahaan. So, when I say this, I mean this humbly, but I realized I was good at it. I realized I was good at apologizing for things that I didn't do. And I realized I was good at listening to them and empathizing and turning a bad situation around. And I remember telling Brantley about that and his perspective being very different than mine of like, man, how can you have someone basically kind of talk to you that way and be that upset and kind of coming at you in a way, because some of them were, and how can you then apologize? And I just said, it's not me. They're mad. Their expectations weren't met. And I get the privilege of trying to fix it and restore their faith and their positivity towards, at the time, the Braves, our brand. So I remember feeling like I might have been made for this. Like this might be my calling to help turn around bad situations. Now, the fun thing I realized shortly after that, as we got into the season, we started playing games and I met even more people and more fans, is that's not the only thing I got to do. I got to take good situations and make them even better, or somebody celebrating an occasion and surprising them and going above and beyond. So it's not just the negative, but I know every year when I talk to anyone, who is going to work in some capacity with our fans, I always say, like, don't be afraid or discouraged by those upset guests, the ones that are just really, really mad. Try to go ahead and flip the switch and see the opportunity in it. Because I still have relationships from that very first Fan Fest of people that I called. And even the year after, I still have some very specific stories of relationships with people, just because I just stopped to listen and talk to them. And in fact, I think, you hear customer service stats all the time that, someone who's complained or been upset, if they're listened to and that situation is resolved, or they feel like they were heard, that fan is, or that guest or customer is even more loyal than they were before, more dedicated than if they had no issue at all. So I learned that early on in my career, and I love that. I got off on a tangent there, a bad one,
No, it was great.
I'm well aware of that. The question was,
No, it was good.
here, I got the first 3 months right then with that. Okay.
It's totally okay. And you all, I know Hannah. I'm really lucky enough to know Hannah very well. But she does get off on these tangents, but they're good. So you don't want to stop her, because anyone who's listening and that was great perspective on a very high level, but on the guest experience.
Yes, for sure.
And I think that will be valuable to listeners for sure. And if they're in a different department, it'll give them some light onto what their colleagues and coworkers go through. And if they're in the guest services department or aspiring to be, it's definitely going to be helpful. So I think that was good. So now, knowing that we can't do an 8-hour session, which we totally could, but knowing that we can't, keep going. Tell us. Okay. So, and I love the foundation you set too, right? So now you've told us how it just tugged at your heartstrings.
Yes, but I feel like I found my groove, right? And I became comfortable in it. And the more experiences that I was exposed to, good and bad, just the more I grew in my skills of handling those situations, but also just in my confidence that, this is where I'm supposed to be, and this job is for me. And so fast forward about 8 months, in the fall of that same year, I was offered a full-time position, a coordinator position in the guest services department. Was obviously ecstatic, said yes, and that was the start of my full-time career in sports. From there, advanced in the roles there at the Braves, so went from coordinator to senior coordinator probably 2 years later, and then manager probably 2 years later or so, and served in the manager role for a couple of years. And at that point, a lot of the core job responsibility really hadn't changed, but I was getting, more leadership exposure, a little bit of more exposure as I grew in my career to more strategic, initiatives and things that we were doing as an organization related to guest services and the guest experience. So as a manager, got an opportunity to help my boss and leader at the time work on a league-wide initiative. And here's where I smile, because we started having conference calls with a couple of people from other teams. And Jahaan, you were one of those people on those calls. But we were trying to plan a summit that would bring all the baseball teams together with the sole focus of talking about the guest experience. And I was able to be a part of that. It was just such a neat opportunity to see us come together as a league and share best practices. Yes, we're competitors, but at the same time, we all want to make sure that the game of baseball was one that our fans enjoyed and loved coming out to our venues to see and experience, and not just watch at home on TV. So we had all come together to focus on that and talk about best practices. And this is where it goes back to networking a little bit, and some really strong relationships were formed. I got to know you and some other folks that still talk to today. And a couple of years later, got a phone call from the Cubs to say, hey, you may be interested in a job here. And so explored that opportunity. Honestly, almost turned it down. The reason why is because I had a 1-year-old at the time, and I always thought I would travel and live in different places, but I got married pretty young, and then honestly found a dream job pretty young, right? I mean, here I was working at the Braves. I grew up in a small town in South Georgia, and I loved the Braves growing up, and I was working for the Braves, and I'm good. It's kind of how I felt, but I was intrigued at the same time. And I was intrigued because there was an opportunity to help build something. and that fascinated me. And I remember thinking, gosh, I just don't know if the timing is right. I mean, I have a small child. What a big city to move to. And I almost didn't listen, but I decided to just listen. And I'm so glad that I did, because the more I listened, the more those little tugs started to happen of like, maybe something's there. But it really wasn't until, pretty far along in my mind, I had maybe shut it down a couple of times. So I just can't see it. There's no way I'm going to move to Chicago right now. And I was grateful for the support of, people I worked with at the Braves who knew that I was exploring this opportunity, and they were very supportive of me doing that. I just remember coming home pretty much ready to just close the door on it. And my husband saying, I think we need to do this. And I remember thinking, what? I was really just at the point where I was about to shut it down. And he was like, I just think that you need this, and I think you deserve this. And I'm getting emotional because
I am too.
because he saw something in me, and sometimes somebody else sees something in you, and you don't always see it at first. But he's like, I think you need this, and we can always come back. If we can't live in a big city with a 1-year-old and it just doesn't work, we'll come back. But I don't want to have any regrets, and I don't want to wonder what if, and I definitely don't want you to wonder what if. And so it was in that moment I knew I was going, period. I didn't realize that I was kind of shutting down something, not really for myself, but just thinking it was the right decision for all of us to maybe just shut that down. And I remember how freeing it felt to say yes to it. So glad that I did, because I got to work with you for 3 years and met so many, wonderful people at the Cubs, and got to help build something. And, you all had already started, and I was able to join in close to the beginning of just building a new service philosophy, and, really taking a look at the whole guest experience and how we could take such an iconic place of Wrigley Field with some of the most amazing people working there, with some of the most fascinating stories of careers but who just wanted to be at Wrigley Field every day. How do we take that whole package that is already so fabulous, just looking at it from the outside, but then tie it all together and exceed people's expectations and make them not really care as much about what happens on the field? Because at the time, things weren't going so well for the Cubs. It was not a pretty first season there on the field, but that was what was so neat about the timing, is the ability to create something off the field that we could control. And from there, stayed there for 3 years, and my husband actually got an opportunity to come back and take a job back here in Atlanta. And it went by too quickly for me. I really wasn't ready yet. But
I wasn't ready yet either.
But I understood. And he had really moved for me. And I knew that he missed warmer weather and missed more months of the ability to golf. And I knew that he had an opportunity in his career. And so it was time for me to kind of make a sacrifice for him. And so he got a job opportunity back in Atlanta. And I remember feeling at a crossroads at that time, because, we had our second child in Chicago, and the hours I was working were, as we all can relate to, a lot. And I remember thinking, is this going to work? Is this an opportunity to kind of do some soul searching and evaluate continuing a career in sports, or maybe taking, maybe going for quality of life and looking at something more 9 to 5. And so when I took the job back in Atlanta, I remember thinking, I'm not going to rush this. And I remember, offering to the Cubs, I still really, care about this place, and my husband's job is, what's moving us right now. But if I can help in any way, still do some work for you in the interim, I'd love to do that. And I guess that's what they call consulting. But to have called myself a consultant at that time, that's might have been a stretch. But I said, I can still help you with some of the projects that I was going to do during the off season if I had still been here. So it was a win-win. It was like, sure, why not? So I love that I got a taste of that because I was able to do three different projects over the next 8 months, and I've never felt more focused and productive in my entire career because I had a very specific thing to do and deliver by a certain date, and it was just a very rewarding time. And I remember when I knew it was kind of coming to an end. I had done 3 really great projects and that I really enjoyed working on, and it was time. Like there was really nothing else to do there. And I remember Brantley asking me, "What do you want to do now?" And I remember saying, "I don't know at all." Like I would think about it, and there would just be a blank page. Just nothing would come to mind. And I remember feeling like I just need to sit in this season right now. And I had 2 children, and I was a stay-at-home mom for about 8 months. And I never thought that would be me. But I saw it as an opportunity to get a feel for the other side. You always hear the saying, the grass isn't greener on the other side, or, I got a taste of what it was like to not work and be home. I knew there was a reason why nothing would come to mind. And it's easy to look back on it now and know that I was being prepared for a very different, very different stage of life. But the Cubs opportunity was amazing to consult with them. And I had kept my relationships with the Braves and kept in touch. And they were opening a new ballpark at the time, SunTrust Park, and they were opening a new ballpark, and they were, they needed some specific help with some new opportunities. So they were going to be increasing their number of premium seats from 400 at Turner Field to 4,000 or so at SunTrust Park. And they wanted somebody just focused on the premium experience to work with the departments that were already doing some amazing things. So just basically project manage that premium experience. And I found out during those conversations that I was pregnant with my 3rd child. And I remember feeling like this sounds like such a neat opportunity to be able to help them open a brand new ballpark. It sounds wonderful. But I also felt the unknown of having a 3rd child and if I really wanted to commit to a full-time job. And so for the first time, I just said what I wanted. And it was, I can help you maybe in a consultant role or a part-time role. And I had no idea if I was shutting the door on an opportunity, but I knew that in my heart was what I was capable of committing to. I put it out there, here's what I think I can do. I really don't feel comfortable committing to a full-time job right now, but I think I can still help. I think I can be valuable, but what if we get creative on what it looks like? And the answer was, you know what? We were thinking about this not being a full-time job either. Like, that sounds like a great idea. And it ended up being a win-win of an opportunity to come back to the Braves in a consultant role focused on the premium experience.
Hey, Jahaan here. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I'm sure you are thinking about your own career right now and how you can pull out in front of the pack to take your career to the next level. For 18 years, supporting women in sports has been my favorite part of my career, and I would love to support you. Whether it's joining my free Game of Her Own community or one of my one-on-one coaching programs, I am here for you. Send me a message at jblake@jahaanblake.com or DM me on Instagram at jahaanblake, and let's schedule a time to have a free session. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right, let's get back to why you're here. All right, Hannah. So I keep getting the chills, right? And I know a lot of your story, and as I'm hearing this, the same thing keeps coming up along your entire journey is you always trusted yourself and listened to your heart. Every single time an opportunity came up, you listened to yourself, and sometimes it was difficult, right? Sometimes there was uncertainty. It was something, I guess all the times it was brand new and you didn't know what it was going to look like, but you knew it was the right thing to do. Something always told you, this is it. This is scary, but this is it. I have no idea what this is going to end like or look like, but this is what you're supposed to do next. And
Yes.
that's such a good lesson for people to hear, because it's so easy when you're applying for these jobs and trying to just get to your ultimate goal. And it's scary sometimes, right?
For sure. And someone listening might be thinking, well, I've been at that place, but I don't have clarity. I know what that feels like too. And that's that season of just being a stay-at-home mom. I knew that I was made to work. I knew that that's how I was wired, that that's really where I found, some fulfillment. Was I felt like a better mom being, having a career. I felt like I was, but I remember not having an answer, or not hearing an answer, getting clarity. And so if that is where you are, my advice is stay there, because you don't have the answer yet. So sit tight. It's not time. Like your opportunity that you're in, there's something still useful out of that opportunity. So stay in that moment and until you do know, because when you do know, you will know. And if you don't know, then stay put.
Wow. So, okay. So someone like me, if you told me this, you don't know yet, so stay put.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think, well, I'm not in the workforce. Like I'm already tapping because I'm getting antsy, like thinking about sitting still and just listening to myself for 8 months, right? For you, it ended up being 8 months. For everybody else, it could be something different. But when you tell us to sit still and wait for that answer, what do you do to make sure you're doing things that help that answer come to? Like what advice would you give there?
I think it goes back to something we talked about already, which is leverage relationships. And don't leverage them because you're trying to find an answer. Don't leverage them with a goal in mind. But I'll admit, during that 8-month, I'd say, hiatus from work, although staying at home is some serious work, that I commend all stay-at-home moms for doing. I was not very good at it. But I wasn't the best at that time about, leveraging relationships. I knew that I was supposed to be kind of staying put in and not doing anything. I felt like that was the right thing to do, but I wasn't the best at that time about networking. But I tried. I just tried to keep in touch with people. I was very honest with them too, that this is the season I'm in and I'm just trying to enjoy it, because I know in my heart it's not going to last forever. I know I'm going to work again one day. I don't know what that's going to be, but I think it goes back to just leverage those relationships, but make sure your relationships are genuine and they're not, a needs, wants based relationship. Make sure that you're talking to people and communicating with people just because you want to, and because you care about that person and they care about you. And you just talking to people and putting yourself out there to meet with people and have coffee with people, you just never know. It may give you an idea. It may, a job opportunity may present itself, but it may just give you an idea, or it may just confirm that you're good with where you are right now. But just continue to talk to people. Even if you're sitting tight in the season, don't shut down. Don't turn yourself off. Just be comfortable with where you are in that season of life, but still talk to people, still network. And if it's taking too long, just understand that there's something in the timing. Something could be in the works and be developing, and you'll know when it's time to make a move.
It's patience. It's trusting yourself. I think the key thing here is you really are trusting yourself. And Hannah, that's not easy to do. And I'm going to put you on the spot here. What grounds you to trust yourself that way?
Well, I did think that this would come up because I don't think that I can talk about my career without talking about my faith, because I just don't think the two can be separated. So that is what grounds me. Is I have a very strong faith in God, and I definitely not perfect, and I definitely have ignored many times when he was probably trying to tell me to sit tight or do something and I didn't listen. But as I have grown in my career and I've been able to, it's easy to talk about it with you right now, right? It's easy to look back and connect all the dots and see how they led to one another. It's really easy to do that after the fact. When you're in it, it's very difficult and you cannot see the path and you don't know where it's going to lead. And that unknown, some people do better with that than others. It can be very daunting. That's where the more I got out of my comfort zone and the more I felt I needed to take a risk, the more dependent I became on, God and my faith to say, I really don't know if this is, the right answer, but show me if it is, show me if it isn't, close the door if it's not meant for me, I trust that you'll open the door if it is for me. So, fast forwarding to now and being offered an opportunity to be a vice president at, the Atlanta Braves, I remember feeling floored by that, just absolutely floored by that opportunity. And we all do this, and I mean this very humbly, not in a negative way. I felt not ready. I felt a little bit like, whoa, for the first time in my career, many times in my career, I felt more than ready. I felt like I was kind of, okay, I'm ready for the next thing, but the opportunity hasn't presented itself. Somebody doesn't see that in me yet. And in an instant, it went to, oh my gosh, somebody saw something in me and I don't know if I'm ready. And that was the first time I felt that way. And I remember for the first time ever really bringing God to work with me every day, because I said, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really have the answers. To say I don't know what I'm doing is unfair, but there was just certain decisions to make and things to do. And they weren't easy answers. They weren't like, well, here's a playbook for this, and now you do this. I had to lean on my faith, and still do, to just show me the way, to give me that feeling of knowing how to make decisions. And if I didn't know how to make decisions, then I knew that I needed to be patient until I felt more at ease with making that decision. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you really relied heavily on your faith.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you brought God to work with you every day. Now, if someone's listening saying, okay, but I'm not very religious.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like, who do they bring to work every day with them?
Yeah. I think it's getting to know yourself and what makes you tick. For me, what makes me tick is my faith. Like, that's who I am. So I think that you need to be good with you and know yourself. And if you're in a perpetual cycle of things like not working out or not going your way, I think look inward first. I'm not saying because something is wrong with you. I'm saying look inward and ground yourself in getting to know you and what makes you tick. What do I love? When I'm feeling good, what about that situation is making me feel good? When I feel bad or mad or sad, what about that situation is making me feel bad? And really get to know yourself. Through that process, you'll discover what grounds you. You'll know how to listen to yourself. I hope I'm making sense here, but it may not be God for you, but you will get to know something in you that makes you tick. And I think you'll be able to start making decisions that are right for you and not because it's what the world wants you to do or what would elevate your career. You know who you are, you know what makes you happy, and you start to make decisions based on that. That would be my advice.
Okay. I should have wore a sweatshirt. I'm freezing because I have the chills again. This is such great stuff. Thank you. So, and we're not done yet. I have so many more questions, but knowing what makes you tick, making sure it's the right decision for you. Here you are, Hannah, we want you to be an executive. So here you are, a first-time executive. And I love that you shared with us, you thought you weren't ready, but you are, right? We all know that. I know that Brantley, your husband, knew that. So we all knew you were ready and you took that job. What inside of you said, okay, it's time? What helped you get over that fear of being a brand new executive?
Ooh, that's a great question.
And I don't know if it was fear. I just named it that. But
no, there definitely was a little bit of fear. I felt seen, heard, and valued, and it was such a wonderful feeling. And I remember thinking, okay, I have an opportunity. Someone saw something in me, and I have an opportunity to maintain that and continue to grow that. I liked that pressure, honestly. When looking back on my career, I could say that moment was no different. The moment of being offered such a, awesome role with the Braves and be, vice president, it really was no different than my boss when I was a trainee bringing those papers to my desk of complaints saying, I need you to call these people. That feeling there was no different than the feeling of being offered a vice president role of like, okay, how am I going to do this? And I don't know the way necessarily, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to learn. So I look back, it's the same thing as kind of going to the Cubs and moving to a new city and saying, I don't really know what the people are going to be like there. I'm going to be in a new organization for the first time in my career. I've been 7 years with the Braves and here I am going to a new team. What's it going to be like? All of those, when you experience change and there's a new opportunity that presents itself, big or small, they're really no different. And so I think that's what I saw. I saw an opportunity to figure it out. And I really liked the pressure. And I was reminded that throughout my career, I had that feeling. I met that feeling head on, put one foot in front of the other, and ended up responding well to that feeling and figuring it out, and not alone, asking other people, humbling myself to say I don't have the answer, but I'm looking for it. Honestly, I would say that's how I faced it, was just knowing that really this is no different than picking up the phone and calling some angry fans and just figuring it out along the way.
Wow. We could talk all day about this. Right? Like we've already been talking for almost an hour now, and I don't want to stop, but we will start to wrap it up. So my last question to you is, you've given so much great advice, especially for women who want to move up in their career and how to go about that in a way that feels good to them and right to them and not listen to the noise on the outside. So I think you gave a lot of great, solid advice. So I think we end with, tell us what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received.
That's a tough question for me, and here's why. Because I am such a gut feeling kind of person that if I answer this question, I sound a little prideful. I don't mean to be, but it's just that I think it's really important to expose yourself to advice and definitely get advice. But at the end of the day, you've got to listen to kind of what you're feeling and thinking. So you've got to be able to take all of that in, educate yourself, and you've got to educate yourself. You've got to have diversity of thought and people with other experiences and other perspectives to be able to look at your situation and say, well, here's what I'm seeing and thinking. And that is so valuable. But at the end of the day, I feel like listening to yourself and what your gut is telling you to do is pretty spot on. One piece of advice that has stuck out to me was actually when I was going to take the opportunity at the Cubs. Someone said to me, it sounds like it's a great opportunity. Like maybe you should take it. I mean, they weren't telling me what to do, but they were like, everything I'm hearing sounds really good. The only thing I'll say is you don't know what you don't know. And that sounds so silly, but to be advice, it's like, what do I do with that? You don't know what you don't know. But the reason why I see it as advice is because I use that all of the time. It didn't really hit me right away at the Cubs, but I realized that just being aware of the reality that you don't know what you don't know helps you approach a challenging situation, maybe a situation that should anger you or upset you. And maybe listening to that piece of advice can make you sit back a little bit and say, well, I don't know what I don't know. Maybe I don't have the full picture. Maybe I don't have the full perspective. Let me make sure I understand the whole situation before I respond quickly and react. But it's an interesting piece of advice, but one that I apply to a situation. I get an email and I'm just like, I don't really know if I agree with that or know what to do with that. Well, let me try to understand the whole perspective and figure out what maybe I don't know about that situation. So I think that was good advice. I didn't really know how to use it right away, but it has come back to me over the years. I have some advice I would give.
Oh, all right. Let's hear it.
Because I feel like it's a theme that's come up through our conversation as we've been talking. And I think, a couple things. Being present in the here and now, I think is so important. I thought you might ask me about, probably because I talked too much, you didn't get around to this question, but and what was your ultimate goal when you set out in sports? And I'm not a goal-oriented kind of person, especially long-term. I can't even wrap my head around where I might be in 5 or 10 years. I'm not saying this is everybody. I just don't think like that. And people that do, that's wonderful. I think it's important to have goals and work towards something. But even if you do, being present in the here and now, what's the opportunity in front of me right now, and how do I make the most of that? And what am I here to learn? What am I here to take away and take with me to the next opportunity? Not getting too far ahead of yourself to be so focused on that ultimate goal that you're missing kind of the reason you're in the spot that you're in right now. And then when it's a no, when you get a no, there's a reason in that too. So what are you supposed to learn from that no? Then there's still something that you're going to take away from that moment before it's a yes. So just being present in the here and now is some of my best advice to give, because you're in that position for a reason. You're in that situation for a reason, even if it's not where you want to ultimately be. I think that, and I can say from experience, that you'll look back on it one day and be so grateful for it and see with complete clarity what you got out of that time and how you wouldn't have traded it for anything. So
I feel like you should just drop the mic and walk away right now. That is really, really good advice. I know for myself personally, when I let go of this goal that I had, that I said when I was 21, I have to be an executive in sports to be successful, right? So everything I did leading up to it, you have to take I was a part-time ambassador. It was I just didn't feel like I was successful yet, but I was. Right? Mm-hmm. Every part of my journey, every part of your journey that you talked about, you were successful when you stopped and you're like, I'm in the present moment. So I love that advice. And what I also hear you saying is it's okay to have a goal, right? I want to be a wonderful mom, right? That's your goal. That's not my goal, but I want to be a wonderful mom, wife, right? Like you wanted to work. You felt like you should be, you were called to do work, and it ends up being in the guest experience and strategy sort of space. And so that was a goal, but your title, right? What your office looked like, or having an office or not, right? Having a company car or not, right? Those weren't the things that were driving you. It was really about what made you feel fulfilled.
Still working on a company car, by the way.
What's that?
Still working on that company car, by the way.
Me too. But it all boils down to, for you, what fulfills you, right? What speaks to you versus letting someone else do it for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Hannah, this is great stuff. So now if someone wanted, I hate for this to end, but I guess it has to, but if someone wanted to get in contact with you, what would be the best way?
I would love for them to reach out to me, probably on email or LinkedIn. Obviously connected there. So Hannah Basinger on LinkedIn, and Hannah.Basinger, Basinger @braves.com.
All right, Hannah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
What do you think? I wish I could really hear your answer. Do you listen to yourself? Do you trust your gut? I hope that hearing about Hannah's journey and how she is very intentional about getting quiet enough to listen to herself inspires you. I hope it inspires you to do the same. Thank you for listening. I would love to stay connected with you. You can follow me on Instagram @Jahaan Blake, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. If you're interested in learning more about how I can support you in your journey in the sports industry, email me at jblake@thejblakegroup.com or send me a DM on Instagram. I look forward to hearing from you.